Wee wee.
Wee wee. Awesome. So, we'll get going. As I said before, we'll need a pencil and a pen and a ruler. And we're going to talk about note durations, rests, and duration table. And in the middle of this, we'll also talk about each individual note that we use. And the notes we use are the exact same for bagpipes as they are for snare and also bass and tenor drums. So all the notes remain exactly the same. For those of us or those among us that play different instruments, I know some of you play violin, some folk here play piano as well. The notes again are the exact same, but how we apply them to pipe band drumming and how we play them are slightly different. Okay, so any note can be high or low, and this is called pitch. So again, the notes in terms of pitch, that doesn't really apply to us as drummers, and even tenor drummers. Yes, you play different pitches, but the way the music's written, the pitch isn't applied. Alright, so we'll just play taps or rolls. Okay, so the notes don't really tell us what pitch they are. They tell us how long and how short they are for us. So for snare drummers and bass and tenor, the duration absolutely applies to us. Alright, so this is where we'll know whether we're playing a certain note or not. Okay, and the shape of the note tells us its duration. And if you're thinking, well, what does duration mean? Duration is just how long a note is held for. Alright, so we'll be playing a certain note. That basically tells us how long it is from one note to another. And there's 6 different notes in common use, and you'll need to know that. That'll be a question you might get asked in a test. It might say, how many note shapes are there in general use? You would say 6. The question might say, how many note shapes are there in general use, and name them all. So you would say 6, and you would name every single one of them, which we're about to do just now. Okay, so the very first note that we'll use is called the semibreve. So can I get you all to write on your wee bit of paper the semibreve, and I'll get you to draw this note shape here. So this one here, don't draw it too big, okay, because you will have all seen music before, and you'll know what size a note shape is. Alright, so you don't need to draw it massive. Alright, it's just a little circle, and it's a semibreve, also known as the whole note. And this note consists of a hollow note head. So you'll see there, just a note head on its own, and it's hollow, because the note heads we're used to seeing are filled in. Okay, so they're filled in, or fully black note heads. That's the ones we're used to seeing. And they look like this. In fact, this one's not filled in, sorry. The note heads look like this on the minim. This will look a bit more familiar because it's got the stem coming down, which is a line coming down, which kind of makes it look a wee bit like a lollipop. Alright, so this is the minim, which is known as the half note, and the half note consists of the same hollow note head, but it has a stem. So the stem is the line that's coming down from the note head, and I'm going to draw that as well. So we've got the minim, and then we've got the semibreve, and then our next note is a crotchet. So this is one that we should have all seen before for sure. So it consists of a filled in note head with a stem. So again, the stem's a line coming down the way. You can see that I'm marking with my mouse. And the filled in note head is the big black circle there. So that's the note head. So the previous note head was the minim. You see it was a hollow note head. And then we added the stem. And for the crotchet, it's almost the same as the minim. We're just colouring in or filling in the note head. And then we've still got that stem there. And it's a quarter note. And after we've went through what all the notes are, when I explain the duration, these fractions will make a bit more sense. Okay. And the next one is the 8th note, which is the quaver, and some of you will be thinking, oh, I like quavers. I like quavers as well. The crisp quaver. Alright, unfortunately this isn't a quaver crisp. It's the exact same filled in note head. We've got the stem here, but we've also got a tail. So this will be known as, or the quaver consists of a filled in note head with a stem and one tail. And that is a quaver. So make sure you are drawing these out. I'll go back to the minim for those who need to still draw the minim. I'll give you about 10 seconds just to draw that out. So that was your minim, consisting of a hollow note head and a stem. And make sure you write that as well, alright, because we need to remember these things. So there's your hollow note head and there's your stem. And then our next one was the crotchet, or quarter note. It was a filled in note head and a stem. So there's your filled in note head and there's your stem. The quaver, or 8th note, consists of a filled in note head with a stem and one tail. There's your filled in note head, there's your stem, and there's your one tail. I'm not sure if when I done the minim there, if I said filled in note head. If I did, I'm sorry. It should be a hollow note head, and that will be on the slides, alright, or on this video. It'll say hollow note head. Our next one is a semi-quaver, okay, or a 16th note. And for me, the word semi, when I hear somebody say it's like a semi something, it means it's half or a part of. So I think of half, so almost like a half quaver, semi-quaver. And it is a filled in note head with the same stem, but it's got two tails this time, or two flicks. Some folk will refer to the tails as flicks, but it's two tails at the bottom of the note. So there's your filled in note head, there's your stem, and there's your two tails, okay? And it's a 16th note. And I'm going to draw this one out as well. And this is why I asked you to bring a ruler and a pen or a pencil to draw these. And I would use a ruler to do these notes for now, just to make them ridiculously accurate. When we draw the duration table and we draw several of these notes, then I wouldn't worry about using a ruler. Okay, I would still make them incredibly neat, but you don't need to worry about the ruler. And the last note we use is the demi-semi-quaver, which is also known as the 32nd note. And this note consists of the filled in note head with a stem and three tails. So again, there's our filled in note head, there's our stem, and there's 1, 2, 3 tails. Okay, all three tails, or flicks, again, as some folk might refer to them as. And I'll give you a wee moment to finish that, and then I'll scroll back to the semi-breve so we can recap them all quickly. There, so there's the semi-breve, which was just our hollow note head, and that was the whole note. Next one was the minim, or the half note, and it consisted of our hollow note head and a stem. Next one was the quarter note, or the crotchet, the filled in note head and a stem, no tails. Quaver, or 8th note, consists of a filled in note head with a stem and one tail. Note head, stem, one tail. Semi-quaver consisted of a filled in note head with a stem and two tails. So there's our note head, stem, two tails, and it's the 16th note. And then the demi-semi-quaver, which is our 32nd note, is a filled in note head, a stem, and three tails. And you might be thinking, well, why is it called an 8th? Why is it called a 16th? Why is it called a 32nd? Well, when you split down the whole note, which was the semi-breve. Alright, if you break it down, there's 32 of these semi-quavers equal one of them. That's basically what we're talking about. 16 of these semi-quavers equal one of them. And again, you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean? Well, when I play, let's think of it as a snare drummer, a quarter note, 4 taps, alright, 4 taps are equal to one of them, or 4 beats in tenor drumming is equal to one of them. And it might be a bit easier for us to show you that as an illustration. And to do that, we use the duration table. So, as I said there, these are all the note shapes that we use, and let's look at what they mean and how we would play them. So, to do this, we use the duration table. Okay, so I'm going to get you to draw this out as well. So we had our semi-breve, which is our whole note, at the very top. And you don't need to write the semi-breve if you don't want to. Just make sure you draw the semi-breve at the top. And on the left here, you don't have to draw this, but this is going to be like a big cake or a pie that I'm going to use to illustrate. So the semi-breve, alright, is like a big cake or a whole pizza theoretically, if you want to think of it like that. Alright, nothing's been cut off. It's just the whole thing, the absolute massive piece of cake or pizza. And then when we split that note in half, we've got 2 minims. Alright, so there's our 2 minims there. And the minim was our hollow note head with 2 stems. And notice here, it's split in half now. Okay? And our next note was our crotchet. Boom, there it is. So the minim is equal to 2 crotchets, and the 2 minims equals 4 crotchets, sorry. So 1 minim equals 2 crotchets, 2 minims equals 4 crotchets. Hence the quarter note as well, because you might be thinking, well, the quarter means 4, like for those who have done fractions before. A quarter, sorry, is 1 over 4. That's why we've got 4 of them. Okay? And then there's our piece of pizza. I'm going to go for pizza because I'm quite hungry. So there's our pizza there again. So our next one is eighths. So there's our quavers, or eighth notes. So there's 8 of them are equal to 1 of those semi-breves. Okay, so there's our tail, and the line across the bottom of these two, alright, is the same as that tail. So 1 line under the note represents 1 tail. So these 2 are quavers, these 4 are quavers as well. Alright, and the reason we use the small beams underneath the notes is it tidies everything up. Because if we were to just do loads of notes with 1 tail, then 2 tails, 3 tails, no tails, it would be really messy. Alright, really messy. So we use the beams underneath the notes. So our next note was the semi-quaver. Alright, and you'll see on my wee pizza here, the slices are getting smaller and smaller. Alright, it's still the same amount of pizza. Alright, we need to remember that. The same, absolutely the same amount of pizza, we've just split it into smaller bits. So instead of 1 massive bit, we've now got 16 smaller bits. Okay, and again, there's our 16th notes. Filled in note head, stem, 2 tails, and there's our 2 tails. Alright, except we've beamed them up, which you can absolutely do. And for those, which should be everybody, who have played any drum scores using music, you'll have all seen notes with 2 lines underneath them. The lines are represented by, or the tail, they're equivalent to the tails. So 2 tails, these notes have got 2 lines, so they're all semi-quavers, every single one of them. And when you see notes that have got 3 lines, they're demi-semi-quavers. Alright, so all these notes here, they've got 3 lines under them. They're demi-semi-quavers. Okay, again, not very often you would see a pizza cut into 32 bits, but that's what it looks like there. So 32 of these demi-semiquavers are equal to 1 of those semi-breves. Okay, so to break it down in drumming speak, you might be thinking, well, what does that mean to us? Well, if I was to say a semi-breve equals 32 demi-semiquavers, you're probably thinking, geez, oh, that is absolutely mental. It is a bit mental, and that's why you will very rarely, if ever, in drumming see a semi-breve, sorry. Alright, because with drumming we can't really hold a note. Alright, so for us, I've got a drum pad here. If I was to tap it, alright, that could be one of any of those 6 notes. Alright, the way we figure out what one it is the space from that tap to the next tap. Okay, so if I was to do this, tap, tap, like fairly evenly spaced taps, like that, and there's my beat, and you'll hear that. Those notes are going to be crotchets, okay, because I'm playing them on that beat. If I was to do a tap and then miss a beat, like this, they would be minims, because I've got a beat and there's a big space, beat, space, beat, space. There's a big space between each of those taps. And then if I was to play a semi-breve, it would be like this, tap, tap, and you see it just takes forever. And you might be thinking, the clever clogs amongst you might be thinking, well, we can't stretch a note in drumming, but we can roll. Yeah, of course we can. You can roll, alright, but that's you not stretching that note, you're rolling from one note to another. So I could roll from this quaver to another, this crotchet to another crotchet. That would be a 13. Just like that. You can roll from that quaver to that quaver if you wanted, alright, because quavers would be there. So I'm splitting the crotchet in half. If I rolled over from one of them to another, you get that. Okay, maybe a bit easier in person to explain things like that, but if you think of it like a piano, alright, I mean, I don't play piano, I mess about in the keyboard sometimes for the banter, but if you're to press a note on the keyboard or piano, it's quite easy to stretch it. You just hold the key down. Alright, for drummers we can't really hold a tap down. You just play a tap, and then the space from one tap to another is our duration. And you'll see here, for example, this is quite a technical drum score. For our novice band, we played this years ago. There's a quaver, because it's got one tailor, one beam. There's another quaver, 2 semi-quavers, and then you've got demi-semi-quavers here. I'm not expecting us to be able to play this, absolutely not. I'm just wanting to put a bit of music up that gives you an idea of seeing all these note shapes in use. So there's our demi-semi-quavers, semi-quavers, any crotchets, let's have a look, boom, there's one there. Alright, note head, stem, no tail. You've got roll marks there, but ignore them for now. Alright, we'll talk about specific things like that, these slurs, accents, we'll talk all about that further down the line. So all of these notes are called simple notes. Alright, and in a lesson further down the line we'll talk about simple time and compound time, which is our different types of time. We'll talk about that specifically, but for now it's quite good to realise that every single one of these notes are simple notes. Alright, and a simple note is a note that can be divided into 2 notes of equal or lesser value. So basically a note that can be split in half. So this note here has a crotchet We split that in half, we get 2 quavers. That's semi-breve. If I split that in half, I get 2 minims. So every single note here can be split in half. Every single one of them. Alright, if I take that 16th note or semi-quaver and split it in half, I get 2 demi-semi-quavers. It's like anything. Alright, if you split anything in half, you're going to have 2 of them. Okay? And when we count out the notes, for those who have done counting exercises, okay, whenever you're doing a crotchet, remember we're thinking back to our counting as we play. The crotchet's always going to be the number, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're counting the minims, you're just stretching it. You've got 1, 2, you're not playing anything there. 3, you're not playing anything there because it lasts so long. The semi-breve boring, as I said before, you count and you're just waiting. Quavers, it was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then semi-quavers, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. And I'm just going to check what the next slide is. Yep, we're looking at the rests. So I'm going to play every single line there for you. Okay, and when we do the semi-breve, I'm going to count 2, 3, 4, and the minim I'm going to count 2, 3, 4. But you'll obviously not play them because they're not there. Okay, so semi-breve, I'm going to count and we'll go 1, 2, you'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 minims, 1, 2, 3, 4 crotchets, 1, 2, 3, 4 quavers, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 demi-semis, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. I said demi-semis, sorry, just semi-quavers at the end. Okay, so that's how you would play them, and that's how they're counted. And notes and rests, every single note has an equivalent rest. Okay, so semi-breve rest looks like a hi-hat, except it's upside down. There we are. There's the minim rest. Semi-breve and minim rest look exactly the same. Exactly the same. So I'm going to get you to draw out that rest for me there. And if you've got space, draw it next to your semi-breve that you drew earlier on. If you've not enough space, then draw it somewhere else on your sheet. And I'm going to do that just now. And I'm also going to draw my minim rest next to my minim as well, because it's quite an easy one to draw. And for the lower sort of beginner levels of the qualifications, you don't really need to be able to draw out the rests. Alright, but at this early stage, I think it's quite good practice to get into. Alright, to be able to draw out these rests. Okay, and then give the crotchet rest a go. There's a much easier way of drawing this one, but I can't really show you just now. But I'll show you when I stop sharing the screen. I'll get a bit of paper ready to show you as well. And then our quaver rest looks like a wee fancy 7. Okay, and that top line is representing that tail. Alright, so there's one line, means there's one tail, so it's a quaver. And then same with the semi-quaver, there's 2 of the fancy lines, means there's 2 tails, so it's a semi-quaver. And the final one, 3 of the fancy lines, same as the 3 lines on the note there, so it's a demi-semi-quaver. And I'll give you just a little moment to copy them out. Okay, and the duration table, as you can see here, can be completed using rests. Alright, so I've not done it here, Alright, but you could easily have the semi-breve rest, the minim rests, the quaver, crotchets, and semi-quavers, demi-semis. You could use the rests, okay? And all a rest is a period of silence in music. So we all know, as drummers, we know what a rest is. We play rests all the time. So when we do a rest, we just stop playing and it's nice and quiet. Pipers don't use rests very often because the nature of the beast with the bagpipes are that it's just a constant sound. It's a constant, I was going to say a noise, but it's not a noise, but it's a constant sound. And with drums, there's spaces all the time. All the time. So just be aware, my daughter's just got home. I'm wondering if she's about to burst in here. I hope she isn't, but she might. If she does, you'll hear her. Nah, she wants to, but she's not getting to. That's good. So that concludes the notes and note shapes lesson and the duration.